Our agenda for today, we're going to go ahead and show you how to get those invoices and those images into TimberScan as quick as possible, whether they are paper, digital, sitting in an inbox, or a file folder somewhere. We're also going to look at how to set up your standard routing workflows and some popular workflows that our clients like to use, how to use TimberScan inquiries and reports to manage and control all of that data. And finally, we'll look at some AIM basics. AIM is our document management software. It's automatically included as part of TimberScan with no charge. While TimberScan is centered around processing vendor invoices, as you know, AIM is a document management program, meaning that we can attach, store, and easily retrieve documents other than vendor invoices. So the images can be attached to multiple records in Sage. So if you want to attach it to jobs, or you've got a contract, you want to attach it to a commitment, an employee, customers, etc. As you'll see, we can manually acquire our vendor invoices or set up our email monitoring system, which can pull designated email boxes that you specify, strip those PDF and TIFF attachments from vendor emails, and automatically save them to a designated location for quick pickup in TimberScan Acquire. We can also acquire invoices that originate in Sage or our own core cloud systems products. We can process invoices from Procore or import invoices from a text or CSV file. And our OCR capture product, I'll just touch on that briefly, can pre-fill data read from an image directly onto the invoice in TimberScan data entry. So we got a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and look at it. It's never been easier to bring our images into TimberScan. Manually, we can scan images directly into TimberScan, retrieve them from a file, or drag and drop the attachments into the Acquire screen. We can also drag and drop a full email into TimberScan's Acquire screen, and then TimberScan automatically takes the attachment off. So let's look at how we do that. I'm going to go ahead and go into the software here. I'm in my Acquire window. I can go and acquire my images. Okay, I'm going to give it an image type of regular. And if I were to come over here and say open file, okay, I'm prompted to say if these are invoices that I will manually separate, one or more invoices each having 1 page or 2 pages, the number of pages I specify. So this way you can take a PDF file that contains multiple invoices and bring that into TimberScan, and TimberScan can automatically separate those invoices. Or a single invoice containing any number of pages, and you can have your invoices separated by a blank page, and TimberScan will be able to separate those pages out into multiple invoices for you. I'm just going to go ahead and check the default and just want to show you the different file types that we can acquire here. So I can acquire obviously PDFs, we can acquire any type of TIFF image here, and I didn't know if a lot of people know we can acquire BMP images, don't see those a lot, and the whole Outlook message you can bring in here with no problem. So if you don't feel like coming here and opening it from a file, we can always come over and drag and drop our images in here. So if I were to come over here, and we can do the same thing from an email, drag and drop it, and away we go. Now, if I had a scanner hooked up here, I could come over here and where my image source is, select that as my scanner and scan directly into TimberScan. Right now, I've just got a file. I'm not hooked up to a scanner on this particular server. Okay, So here's my image. I've got multiple pages. If I need to split it, it's very easily split. I can come over here, scroll down a little bit, and say, all right, this is page 3, but this really starts a new invoice. So I'm going to come over here, click on it, and select my mark new invoice. Repeat the process, just come on down. So I can say, okay, well, this image here also starts a new invoice. Oh, I made a mistake. I can come over here. This is really the first page. So I can drag and drop that over here. So it's very, very flexible. We're going to bring some images into TimberScan in a little bit, but first I wanted to talk about a little bit more automated way to bring our images into TimberScan. If you're looking for a more automated process, our email monitoring service can automatically pull a designated mailbox or multiple inboxes, strip those attachments from the emails, and save them to a shared folder, ideally a OneDrive account that you designate. Now, email monitoring is included in TimberScan at no extra charge. To set it up, we're going to go into TimberScan Admin. Okay. So in our admin, we can use just about any data entry group that we want to designate for our email setup for email monitoring. So if you've got multiple email boxes, we can set up an email box where the invoices are coming into for each data entry group that we have. Currently, we look for PDF and TIFF files only. We can forward all emails, so what we consider a non-conforming email, those that have no PDF or TIFF attachments, we can forward those so you're not losing any of your emails. To take this process a step further, for a separate fee, we offer our Acquire Automation. What this does is it totally replaces the acquire process and puts the email attachment in data entry. So again, just to distinguish the two, because you'll hear these terms thrown around, our email monitoring system can automatically take those attachments from your emails that you're sending to a designated email box, strip those attachments, and put them in a designated folder that you specify. The auto acquire process for a fee totally replaces the acquire process and puts that email attachment in data entry. So there is no acquire step. It also saves your attachments for several days. The default is 10, but you can change that if you want over here in the emailed invoices. To set up our auto acquire, we establish what we call vendor definitions, and you can have as many vendor definitions as you want. When you set up a vendor definition, you specify the vendor's send from email address and your inbox for receiving emails from this vendor. So for example, you may have various vendors processed by different departments, so you can send the email to different email addresses and different data entry people. You can set up as many vendor definitions as you want. We even offer a wildcard, which can accommodate multiple vendor email addresses. After you set up your vendor definitions, we start the service, and email attachments are automatically stripped and placed into invoice entry with the vendors coded on the invoices. Okay, so that's the part of the vendor definition. How is the system going to know which vendor this is? You can also, in addition, if you want, add additional information to pre-fill on that invoice, such as a vendor type, a description, or any kind of comment that you like. Okay. Coming soon, Auto Acquire will be working with our capture program. Just to give you a little heads up on capture. Capture is our OCR product, okay, where it can integrate into TimberScan. It currently reads those manually acquired images from the vendors and codes data lifted from your PDF or TIFF image onto the invoice in TimberScan data entry. In other words, Capture can take that vendor invoice and automatically put it into, after you acquire it, put it into data entry with the coding that you specify on your Capture template. Now, Capture is an additional charge as a fee-based system, but it reads the acquired image and looks for a matching template that you set up. Templates are pretty easy to set up. I can just come over here and I'm going to look at my Capture templates. And you can set up as many of these templates as you like. So I'm going to open this one. Basically, when we set up a template, we tell our template where to find the information on the vendor's invoice. Capture reads the acquired image and looks for the matching template. So for example, the template will tell Capture where to locate the invoice number on the PDF image, where to locate the invoice date, the balance due, etc. In addition to automatically adding the vendor ID to the invoice record along with the date, balance due, etc., we can also set up invoice coding per template. So you can automatically have the job built in there or the invoice type. You can tell it that you want from this vendor, it's always going to go to a particular category, whether that be material or equipment. You can specify a general ledger account if you've got a vendor and he always goes to a specific general ledger account. Or once we bring those invoices into TimberScan, you can just have TimberScan automatically retrieve the information. Basically, what we do is we create a profile for each template, and you can have multiple profiles for a vendor. So if the vendor sends you an invoice that looks one way for a particular job or another way for a different job, or you just want to set up two different templates so the job information is automatically coded in there, maybe along with the commitment, it's pretty easy to do. To demonstrate how this works, it's pretty simple. So I've got my template set up. I'm going to come into Acquire Capture Invoices. Going to find my invoice from my vendor. Drag and drop it in here. Okay, and then all I have to do is say process. Capture's processing it. It's reading that template. Matched. Let's come over here now, and my invoice from the vendor is automatically in invoice entry. Let's find it. My system's running a little slow. I've heard that with so many people now working from home and so many more on the internet that we do have a couple of issues. So hopefully we'll be okay with this particular session. Let's go ahead and look for our invoices or our vendor. It is running a little slow. So this is a a typical capture invoice, I've got what I call my colors turned on. So these colors correspond to the coding on the template, and the coding is all done in color, so it's easy to do. So where the invoice number is on my template, it's in blue. Where the balance due is on my template, it's in green. Okay, so it looks like I didn't have a description set up on my template, but you can see how Capture automatically pre-filled all this information for me, including the job. So I could actually just go ahead and accept this and send it out to my approvers for them to put in the additional information. Okay. You're looking for maybe an alternative way to bring invoices into TimberScan? We've got lots of ways. I'm just going to cover some of them briefly. I just want to sort of introduce you to some of the features that maybe you don't know about. With our core cloud system, which is a separate line of products, we can take, for example, pictures of credit card receipts in the field, process them into TimberScan, and even reconcile them with our bank. The CCS product line is continually expanding. In addition to credit card reconciliation, we offer a full purchase order and inventory package, service management dispatch, expense reporting, mobile time entry. Data and accompanying images can be processed into TimberScan, or data such as time entry can be sent directly over to Sage. There's a separate fee charge for our CCS products, which includes implementation and customization. If you're a Procore user, you can now take those AIA-based invoices created in Procore and automatically bring them into TimberScan for approval and or final review, then export them over to Sage. Like our CCS product line, there is a separate charge for this integration. If you want to enter invoices first into Sage, we can later import those into TimberScan for approval and matching image attachment. This feature is automatically included as part of TimberScan. In addition, we can also import from an Excel or text file into TimberScan. See where this import that's built into TimberScan and how that works. Over in invoice entry, and again, this is a permission that you would give your user in user maintenance. So if I have this permission, I can come over here and import invoices into accounts payable. I can import what we call regular invoices. These are invoices from accounts payable. They've been entered in AP first in Sage, and now we're going to bring them in for approval and image attachment, or even invoices that came from the PO module from Sage into the accounts payable app, or other Sage modules such as property management fees. We can also import recurring invoices, as well as what Sage identifies as imported invoices. And these are the invoices from Service Management module. Once imported, we match the invoice records up with the invoice images that we have acquired. So to look at how to import, and we import by batch. There's a batch of invoices that I entered in AP, or it came over from the PO module or from Service Management. I'm just going to say this is batch 27. You can name your batch whatever you want. The start date on the batch, and I do have some old data in here, so you'll have to forgive me. I think my date might be 10/01/14. I'm just going to say these are already in accounts payable. I could bring in all batches, or I'm just going to bring in a specific batch for now. There's my batch and start. It's going to go ahead look over in Timberline or Sage, see how many invoices are over there in there, and then import the invoices into TimberScan. That was pretty quick. Now, what do we do with those? We acquire the images, so we've done that step. The last step is to come over here and match. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to bring in my batch. And then basically, we just match up the images with the invoices. They automatically go off to approve and final review. Okay. What about importing from a file, which we can also do in TimberScan? Again, this is built into the program. So TimberScan will accept a TXT file, or you can take your CSV file and turn that into a TXT file. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, for recurring monthly invoices from certain vendors, such as your cellular provider, I've seen this with clients, or you've created a spreadsheet for monthly commitment invoicing, you can also import those files into TimberScan, match them up with the images like we did with our invoices from Sage. You can also import a text file with images. So essentially cutting out the match process. So on my import file, I can tell it I have the image located in a certain area, and it will automatically bring the image in with the invoice and go about its merry way for approval. Okay, let's look at switch a couple things up and look at how to set up our approval routing workflows. Now that we've acquired all of these images and data into TimberScan, how are you going to route these invoices for approval? Once again, we can automate this process in TimberScan by setting up approval workflows and what we call approval criteria. In TimberScan, we've established 16 very flexible routing rules from which to choose. You can automatically route invoices for approval by vendor, job or job authorization, commitment, look at your general ledger prefix, your base account or full account. You can set up automatic routing by any combination of job, vendor, job and category, job and cost code, for example. And for additional flexibility, you can define your own invoice types and use those to automate your approval process. The routing rules are numbered to show their hierarchy in our system. So for example, if TimberScan finds a match for an invoice type on an invoice, the system will route according to the workflow set up for that invoice type. If there's no type on an invoice, then TimberScan goes and looks for a different match, such as a vendor, job, etc., and on down the hierarchy. The first match that it locates, it looks up the related approval workflow and routes accordingly to how you set it up. To set up this process, we're going to go into TimberScan Admin Approval Group Maintenance. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that approval workflows are global. So when I set up an approval workflow in admin, I can use this in multiple companies that I've linked to TimberScan. Just like you set up a user once, you can use that user in all your companies. Now with approval criteria, this is unique per company data folder because in your different companies, you can have different general ledger accounts, different vendors, different jobs, etc. So when you log into admin, you want to make sure that you're in the correct company when you're setting up your approval criteria. So how do we set this up? I'm going to go over here into admin, approval group maintenance, approval workflow. Okay, so this is a workflow I'm going to establish to tell TimberScan how to automatically route my invoices, depending on the criteria I've established. For example, we look at Bob's jobs. The invoice is going to route from data entry to Robert. After it goes to Robert, it's going to go to Mike. And then from there, it's going to go to final review. TimberScan is going to take the invoice from data entry. It's going to read the job on it. It's going to say, oh, this is Bob's jobs, so I'm going to route it to this way. After Bob's done approving the invoice, TimberScan comes back here and it looks for anything that we call a threshold. Thresholds are optional. So in this case, we've got a threshold set up after Bob approves the invoice. If the invoice is less than $25,000, it's going to skip Mike. He doesn't need to see it. And it's going to go straight to final review. If the invoice is over $25,000, then Mike definitely wants to see it. It's going to stop at him. He's going to have to approve it before it goes to final review. So you can see all these different levels that we have. You can send it to multiple approvers. So how does TimberScan know that this invoice needs to follow this particular workflow? Over here, an approval criteria, and this is where the data is unique per company. I've got my routing workflow set up. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to give it my criteria. Now, the criteria that shows here, the member type, is based on those 16 routing rules, and we decided which ones we were going to use in our company. You can use all 16, or you can just use the ones that you want. Doesn't make any difference to TimberScan. So what we've done here is we've said, okay, if you're in data entry, you see a job that's coded to 03, 004, 5, or 6, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to look up this workflow, and I'm going to route accordingly. You don't have to route by job as we saw. We could route by GL account. So if I have a particular base account that I want to route by for insurance, I can route it to just a particular approver if I want. We can also set up our own invoice types. Okay, so these are customized. I've set up a type called auto approve. These are invoices that I'm saying, hey, I'm getting them into TimberScan. I want them to be processed here. I want the image attached, but I don't need to approve these. These are maybe overhead invoices that I get, and I'm going to pay them regardless what from maybe one of my utility vendors. So I set up an invoice type called auto approve. And I'm going to set up my workflow. And I'm saying, okay, for this particular invoice type, we're going to go from data entry. We're going to skip all the approval steps, and we're going to go straight to final review, and I'm going to export that and get it over to Sage so you can get paid right away. Invoice types are easily set up over here. Like I said, they're user defined. You can set up as many as you want. Optional, you don't have to use them. So those are two of our popular workflows. Set things up by job or job authorization, or any combination as we saw, or by invoice type. We can also send invoices to an individual approver, as we saw, like Bob and Mike, or we can send the invoices to a group of approvers. And we look to thresholds automatically. So if I want to send this to a group of approvers, I can set up my group over here in user maintenance, a user group member. So I have a group I set up called AP for my approvers. Okay, and over here I've got some approvers designated as alternates, and I've got Doug to be my primary approver. So as you know, when you log into TimberScan, whether you're in approve or whether you're in invoice entry, you can have a primary queue and you can have an alternate queue. Back to Doug. So what we did for him is we set up a couple of groups, that AP group. So the invoice goes from data entry and it's going to go to a group instead of an individual approver. So if I undo this, I get my list of approvers. If I say my group, I get my AP group. You can have multiple groups set up. So what this does is when the invoice leaves data entry, according to the criteria set up for this workflow, it's going to go out to all members of this group at the same time. Now, Doug is going to find this invoice in his primary queue. The other approvers are going to find it in their alternate queue. Once Doug approves the invoice, it goes out of everyone's queue and goes back over to Mike and then final review. What the group allows you to do is, let's say Doug was unavailable and we needed to get this invoice out. Well, any member of that group, such as an alternate member, can approve that invoice. Okay, so even if Doug's not there, they already got that invoice in their queue and they can go ahead and approve it. Pretty flexible. Okay, so we've acquired our data. It's in TimberScan's workflow. How do we manage all of the data and locate where those invoices are in the workflow process? We've got multiple inquiries and multiple reports that we can use to locate our data in TimberScan. One thing to keep in mind is that inquiries are automatically filtered. So approvers and other users are only going to see their assigned jobs and or general ledger prefixes. This is automatically built into TimberScan inquiries. You don't really have to do anything. To restrict access, we just ask that you do not give that user, for example, that approver, view all permission. So that way he's only going to have access to the jobs that have been assigned to him to his approval workflow. We're expanding this. We're always expanding TimberScan, but we're going to introduce in the not too distant future what we call confidential documents. So while our inquiries are automatically filtering based on a job or a general ledger prefix, we listen to our users and they've asked us to be able to have other ways to restrict access to invoices in our inquiries. So if we designate, for example, vendor as a confidential document type, then only people who have that permission in TimberScan admin are going to be able to see those invoices in TimberScan inquiries. Next, after we code it for our vendors, and it is in QA now, so it's coming, we're going to look at confidential documents for separate general ledger accounts. For example, maybe you've got a lawyer, or you've got special utilities that you don't want to see, or partnership draws that you don't want other people in the company to see. We'll be able to designate that general ledger account as a confidential document, and then you specify who can see those documents. A thing to keep in mind, our reports are not filtered at all. Okay, so anybody who has access to the reports can see everything on those reports. So there's a print reports permission in user maintenance when you set up your users. So we normally tell people when we do our training is that reports are usually reserved for accounting personnel only. Approvers don't need to see the reports. They've got plenty of access and the TimberScan inquiries. So let's look at some of our inquiries. They're very powerful. I prefer the inquiries. We have several inquiries. We've got the invoice status. we've got the vendor invoices, the job, and the regular invoice inquiries. There's some other ones that we can give people access to, supporting documents, deleted invoices. These are all separate permissions, so you can mix and match what you want your users to see. In the invoice status, there are that shows all of the invoices that are currently in TimberScan. So we can look at our information here. I can sort on any of our column headings. I'll make this a little bit bigger, easier to see. So for example, if I click on the vendor name, now I'm sorting it alphabetically by vendor name instead of by vendor ID. I can right mouse click on any column heading and I get my drop down list. I can turn columns on, I can turn columns off. I can adjust the width of my columns and it will stay that way. I've got my invoice types. Those are those user-defined types if we want to use them. Accounting date, etc. My actions, so I can see where the invoices are in my process. The level, the action date, and of course I can see the invoice itself, the image, as well as the log on that invoice. So TimberScan behind the scenes is recording every action taken on that, and all that information goes over to Sage for your audit. Or at this point, I can even record a new comment. I can filter or condition on any of these fields also. So for example, if I say I want to see invoices in approve only, I can do that. Or I can build in my special conditions and add an and or here. So I can say custom, and I'm going to add a condition where we're looking for approvers. And let's say I also want to see invoices that are in the final review status. I can hit my toggle, and I change down here to whether it's approve or final review. Can't be in both at the same time. Select OK, and there I go. I also have a dual sort, so I'm just going to remove this. So for example, if I wanted to sort invoices by vendor name, whether ascending or descending, and by invoice date, I just hold down my control key and there you go. So I've got it sorted by vendor and then by invoice date. In addition, I can also group my invoices, and this is for just about any inquiry that we have. So I want to come over here. I want to take my vendor. I'm just dragging it with my left mouse button over here. And now I can see a snapshot of what invoices I have out here for what vendors. You can do that for vendors. You can do that for any of these columns here. So I can see that I've got 12 for A1 Electric. I've got, and I can expand that. Okay, the vendor invoice inquiry works pretty much the same. I can give it a range of dates, and then I can select my vendors. I can select multiple vendors or just one and just take it from there. And I'm seeing not only the invoices in TimberScan, remember the invoice status inquiry only shows invoices in TimberScan, but I can also see invoices in Sage. So I can see all the invoices I have for this vendor with the date range that I specified. I can also see whether they've been fully paid or not. I have access to the logs, and I can also view my image. The job cost and the regular invoice inquiry take it even a step further. Okay, with these inquiries, you can select a date range. You can tell the system whether or not you want to pull invoices from TimberScan or Sage, which is current, or both. I can select whether I want to see all invoices or just open or just paid ones. I can select my date range. For now, I'm just going to say all days. And because I'm in the job cost inquiry, I get a selection by jobs. If I were in the regular invoice inquiry, I get my selection by the companies that I've got set up here. So if I'm looking for all invoices for a job, whether they are still in TimberScan or they're already over in Sage expensed, here you go. And we have the same features here as we did with the other invoice status inquiry, where I can adjust my columns. I have my location here, so it tells me whether or not this invoice is located in TimberScan or over in Sage. If in TimberScan, we also have the action level where it is in the process, it's in approve, and then not only that, but who has this? So this user that I've got set up as Project 02 actually has this invoices right now, and the name of Project 02 is Bob's job. I have the general ledger information here. Both the job cost inquiry and the regular invoice inquiry show not only the invoice information, such as the vendor, invoice number, amount, but it also shows all the distribution information. So I can see my jobs here, my cost codes, GL accounts, anything else that I've got set up to show on this particular inquiry. And remember, we can take columns on or off at will. So if I don't use equipment, I don't need to see that. Again, we have the view where I can view the invoice, and we also have the logs. I can see what happened with that particular invoice in the system. We can export to Excel, where you can slice and dice the information any way you want. We can print the grid. This is what I'm showing right now on my grid. Okay. Or I can take this and create a report. I can give the report a name. I can look at it on screen, or I can create a PDF file. Now within this PDF file, not only do I see the report, but I can tell it to include the images all in one file. So I've got the report for this job showing me all the invoices as well as the actual invoice images. I can include the invoice image automatically. I can also decide whether or not I want to include any supporting documents. The approval stamp page that shows me this is great for auditors. They love it, so we can see that. And if you also include the check image, so there's a way that you can attach that check after that invoice has been paid. So I've got not only my report, but I've got the invoice, I've got the audit trail that goes along with that invoice, and I've got the check that paid that invoice. Over here on the right-hand side, we can group the information. So sort of like what we saw on the inquiry, grouping. I can tell it to print the images with or without my annotations that I made on it, and we can also determine whether or not we want to print in color. Pretty handy. Okay, so just to recap, we've got our invoice status inquiry, our vendor invoice inquiry, the regular invoice and job cost inquiries. We can print a report or export it to Excel. And the job costs on regular invoice inquiries are the ones that include those images. Let's look at some of the reports. So we've looked at the inquiries. We're going to look at a couple reports. Some of the popular ones are the invoice status reports, AP processing trends, export analysis. Some of the features of the status reports is you can drill down to detail, also view your images. Most of the reports are going to pull information from TimberScan only. We have some that pull from both Sage and TimberScan. As a reminder, the reports are not automatically filtered, okay? So be careful who you send these reports to, because if you give it to an approver, for example, he'll be able to see all jobs, not just his or her own. So to look at the reports, I'm going to come over here and show you an example of a drill down report. It's invoice status. There it goes. As I said, my system's running a little slow today. So I've got multiple companies here. I'm just going to pick on one. I can look at everything in data entry, or looks like final review. I can come over here and click on my total invoices. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And so either one of these is a link. Okay, so it's a hyperlink. So if I want to see all the invoices that Michael has right now, looks like he's got 10 of them, and it gives me a total. I can just double click on that, drill down, and there are the invoices. I also can see an image of the invoice and anything else that has been attached to it. So these are the invoice status reports. There are 6 variations of these status reports that display the current status of all the invoices in TimberScan. You can select a user, as we saw, and double click to drill down on that user, or a particular company, or you can drill down to see, well, what's in data entry, for example, versus what's in final review. In addition to our status reports, we have several AP processing trends. You can pull it by group, you can pull it by user. Okay, these reports are designed to provide insight into how long invoices are being held in the various stages from data entry to final review. So if I say I can give it my date range, can't believe it's April already. Which invoices do I want to see? I want to see them both, whether they're completed or whether they're in an incomplete status. I can, because I chose this one by user, I can look at my individual users. So if I want to see this guy, and then I also want to see invoices for this person, I can mix and match as I want. And away we go. These are all crystal reports. Okay, so I can see the vendor, the invoice, but what I'm looking for here is how long these invoices have been staying in a particular process. So we're looking at when it was assigned, in other words, when it came into the user's queue, and when they completed that particular action. So it looks like we've got some pretty fast users here, 1 minute, 0 minutes. If we go along, and we're getting totals. So some of our users are keeping things in there several days longer than some of our other users. Some other popular reports to show you real quick. We've got our export analysis. Okay, this report provides a day-by-day view of the invoices exported to Sage. Okay, it displays the total by batch. So if you're looking for, you've got a batch total over in Sage, you've got invoices by batch. If you want to compare that to batch totals over here in TimberScan, we can do the same. So this is showing me what got exported during that date range that I chose. Okay, it gives me each invoice and then a total number for the batch, total number of invoices, and total dollar amount. Very easy to check and balance against the Sage. Another popular report is the invoice turnaround analysis. This displays the time elapsed between the time that invoice was scanned in and the time it was exported over to Sage. So it gives you a view of how long it takes from the time an invoice comes into TimberScan on average to how long it takes to go over to Sage. Okay, do I want to see the invoice detail? I'm going to say true here, and let's see this. Okay, so this shows me when it was scanned and when it was exported and the length of time it took. So if you've got some old invoices sitting out there, it might be a long time. We have invoice notes reports, so I can see all the notes on the invoice. As I mentioned, all the different status reports. If you're accruing invoices, doing accruals in TimberScan, that we also can see the report on what will not accrue, user lists, etc. Okay. Last but not least, I want to look at some basics of our AIM system. So AIM is our document management program. It stands for Advanced Image Management System. Think of AIM as your filing cabinet for your documents. We have categories, which are our drawers. We have within the drawers, what do you have? You have your file folders, so these are our document types, and we have separate filing cabinets by company. The basics of AIM is we can customize this to whatever your requirements are. Remember, it's an image, it's a document management system. It's not just invoices, okay? We can acquire various image types in addition to PDFs, TIFF. How about Excel documents? How about Word documents? And our latest versions of TimberScan have the Excel and Word applications built right into them, the viewers. Okay, so normally when you're opening something, when you're opening a document in AIM, it opens according to the image type. So PDFs will open in Adobe Reader. TIFFs, we've got ways to open those. Excel, you're going to need an Excel viewer. Word viewer. So our later editions of the software have those viewers built in, so you don't even have to have those programs, those applications installed. We can code documents for easy retrieval. All the coding is user defined. We can attach to numerous Sage records such as jobs, commitments, employees, banks, etc. Customers, we've got workflows. If you want to send your documents through an approval process, that's totally optional for you. We also have, if we're doing that, an audit trail process where we're tracking everything on a log. The search grid and AIM is terrific. We can create supporting documents here, just send over to TimberScan very easily. And we also have what we call a view all process, where you can set up a user in TimberScan without using a license. And all this user can do is view information in AIM. So let's take us a quick look. I know we're sort of running out of time here. So to set up AIM, I'll come over here in maintenance, set up my AIM maintenance. Basically, we set up our categories and we assign users to those categories. So that's how we could control the security here. If you're not assigned to a category, you're not going to see it. Within the categories, right, we have our document types. We also can assign users to document types. For example, I have an AP category, and here I have my credit card receipts, delivery tickets. So these are ways that I can code my particular documents and retrieve them, okay, for easily retrieval. Project management, again, this is all user defined. Remember, we can hook to payroll records too. So I've got my job photos, just to give you some examples, my owner change orders, purchase orders, subcontracts, etc. I can attach these to the actual commitments in Sage. To run AIM, again, as a permission, I want to just show you the search. So if I come in here, I'm going to, and I can save my searches. If I wanted to go into AP, now here's the beauty of AIM. All those invoices that you process through TimberScan, they're also available in AIM. So if you want to let a user look at invoices, but that user, that's all you want that user to do is be able to look at certain information in AIM, and then you can assign those categories to that user for security purposes. You can set up what we call an AIM search only user that does not use a license in TimberScan. So I can come over here, I can search for all my invoices. Again, I would probably condition on here. We don't have a lot in this database, so I'm just going to say search for them all. I can add a condition on here if I wanted to. And again, any of these fields are available that we're coding in TimberScan. I can search by date range. I can search by any coding on the invoice itself. I have a search grid. This is a little bit of a newer feature. So this is going to look pretty similar to our inquiries, where we have all the different columns of information. So I'm going to switch here. I'm going to switch over to here. Going to run my search again. Like I said, it's just a little slow. I can, instead of searching for all the invoices, let's go ahead and just search for some supporting documents. For example, I've got some purchase order documents here. I'm going to search and see what I can find. Maybe I don't have any of these. Oh, there we go. Oops. I clicked too often. Sorry about that. But I got my view. Okay, I've got my add note. I can also view the notes on here. If I've got the permission, I can do some editing, and I can also look at the log on here to see all the workflows that were attached to this. Just to go over that AIM search only user that I mentioned briefly, I could come into user maintenance. If I want to search, if I want to add a new user, okay, so AIM search only. Here's where I come in and my user type. So again, all this person can do when they log into TimberScan is run the search grid feature and AIM, and then we can limit to what that in AIM through security, what that user sees, and it does not take up a license. Okay, so we can drag and drop into AIM just like we can into TimberScan, and direct scan is coming soon. So we've got some AIM users, and we will be able to scan directly into AIM like we can in TimberScan. We sent out our newsletter. I hope you're all getting it. And our most recent one contains some great links in it just to show this to you again. We've got our new user survival guide, TimberScan overview, we've got recording on reports and dashboards, on accruals, on our TimberScan Go, our mobile approval product. If you haven't seen that, you should take a look at it. It's also included as part of TimberScan. So as we're creating and adding new features to our product, a lot of these we're just building them into your normal TimberScan program. Check out our website at www.core-assoc.com, and you can see other recordings there. Log into the customer portal, which this new user survival guide takes you through how to do that, where you can search our knowledge base for information. You can also set up a new support case or update an existing support case. We've got documentation in there on technical information as well as white papers and training recordings. So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I thank you very much for being a member of our Core Associates family, and be safe out there, everybody. Thank you.